Greetings, students. I hope everyone's doing great. This is Module 2, Week 2. I want to tell everyone thank you from the top of my heart for participating in last week's activities in which you shared personal stories. Some of them were super emotional, and it made me so proud and humbled to have you in this course. And some of you shared already your videos that, let us see who you are, a little bit more insight into just the variety of personalities and backgrounds and histories and interests and goals and experiences that we've had as a class community. And I just wanted to hit upon why is it so important that we build community in this class? Well, number one, it's because we do not meet all together in person, which is actually the best way to have a class like ethnic studies. But, we have to work with what we have. So when we're in an online community, activities like the ones we participated in last week are really important. One thing that I want to share with you is that, in ethnic studies, we really focus on being collectivist. That means working together to help us explore the content and come up with solutions and to have discussions about the situations and the experiences that impact us as people. And it's important, I think it's valid to look at this slide, which talks about the differences between collectivist cultures and individualist cultures. So check this out. Approximately 80% of the world, which includes Latin American countries, Asian countries, African countries, Middle Eastern countries, Native American countries, and some Slavic cultures, have collectivistic cultures. That means that the social rules from these areas focus on promoting selflessness, meaning, you focus on others. You're not just focusing on yourself. You work together as a group to help each other and to solve problems. You focus on doing what's best for the community, for the societies that you live in. And families and communities have a really, really important role. So the interconnectedness, the relationships, right, that are built through talking to each other and interacting with each other, the understandings and the sharings of collective wisdom, they promote group success, right? Everybody learns, everybody gets ahead, everybody is successful. And that's really important, right? Now, if we look on the other side, we see individualistic culture. Now, this is only 20% of the world, which includes most of the European countries in this world. So you can see, collectivistic cultures are represented by the majority of people in the world. Individualistic cultures are represented by the minority, or only 20% of the world. And here are traits of individualistic cultures. Being able to work independently by yourself. Autonomy, meaning you go off on your own and you can do it on your own, right? Uniqueness and self-sufficiency. And while uniqueness is not a bad thing, right, and being able to, be self-sufficient is not necessarily a bad thing. In individualistic cultures, such as the predominant culture of education in American society, it focuses on individual achievement, right? Self-reliance. Your learning happens through your own individual efforts and studying and reading, and individual contributions and status are important, but it is competitive, right? It's kind of like each man or woman for him or herself, right? And so I wanted to share this with you because in a class like ethnic studies, we focus on being communal based. We talk to each other. We dialogue. It's not about every person for themselves. It's about helping each other understand the content, helping each other work through some of the, challenging discussions and concepts that we will be exploring. And it's about making sure that we all care about each other. And I saw that in your videos, so I want to say thank you so much for sharing those videos in which you are, saying, hey, I hope everybody has a great semester, that warms my heart, because we are all in this world together, and we are one big human family, and we should be concerned and caring about everybody's success, not just our own individual success. And in this class, we will achieve our collectivistic culture and communal nature through our discussion posts, definitely through the introduction videos, and you already started doing it through your student slideshow. So I wanted to hit upon that, say thank you for helping us establish this community. Please make sure that you continue to look at the videos of the fellow students that you share this course with, and comment on each other's and make connections, and continue to do so in the discussion posts as well. It's quite possible that you will be able to form good friendships from people that you meet in this class, and that's what we hope. So thank you so much for listening to me discuss the importance of building community. And now we will move forward. This video is designed to help explain your week 2 readings, videos, assignments, critical vocabulary, and essential questions. If you have looked at your syllabus for the spring semester, then you will see that I've divided our time together into different sections that represent the 4 key ethnic groups of ethnic studies. We are going to begin with Black Studies. That correlates pretty much with Black History Month, which is starting within the next few days or next week. And so that's why we're starting with Intro to Black African American Studies. And we'll spend about a month for each ethnic group. So here we go. Your week 2 readings are Strike, concerning the 1968-69 strike at San Francisco State College, and The Beginnings of Black Studies, which really was the catalyst for the entire ethnic studies movement as a whole, and the beginnings of Black studies, Chicano studies, Native American studies, and Asian American studies in California colleges. So we're going to start with these 2 readings, and you can find these readings, of course, in your week 2 module. When you are reading Strike, concerning the 1968-69 strike at San Francisco State College this week, here are your essential questions. In other words, your open-ended questions that should guide your reading this week. I'll always provide you with some essential questions so that you know what to focus on, right? And so that you know what to walk away from the readings with. That will most likely be found in an upcoming discussion post, or an activity like a reflection or a quiz that's coming up. It's really important that you learn how to identify and answer essential questions while you're reading. So for this article, your essential questions are: how did the climate of the 1960s contribute to the beginnings of the student strike? What was happening in the world, or in America, and specifically in California before the strike happened, that served as a catalyst for the strike to begin? What specific events were happening at San Francisco State College that led students to be unsatisfied and that led to their unrest? Which student groups were involved and why? How did racism, discrimination, inequity, and oppression impact the strikes? What was the role of these concepts in the strikes? What events took place during the strikes? And how and why did the strike end? And what were the results? What did it achieve? Here are your essential questions for the Beginnings of Black Studies article. You're going to be asking yourself, what is Black Studies? What does it mean? Or African American Studies? What circumstances led to the development of Black Studies courses? Who was involved and why were they involved? How did racism, discrimination, and oppression impact the issues? In what ways did the Black Studies movement pave the way for ethnic studies courses as a whole? And why do we owe respect for the Black Studies movement? You have 3 videos to watch in week 2. The legacy of the Third World Liberation Front student strike at San Francisco State, origins of race in the USA, and why do we say African American? And your journal reflection, which will be your assignment this week due on Sunday, January 29th by midnight, is a reflection on these videos. So it's really important that you watch all 3 because you will be expected to give your opinions and your perspectives and reactions to all 3 videos in your assignment this week. There are 2 assignments that are due by midnight, Sunday, January 29th. One is a journal reflection based on the videos that you are watching this week, and also your student introduction video that was introduced last week. Some of you have already done it, but for those of you who haven't, it's due by this Sunday. We will now explore the key terminology that will serve as the foundation for this entire semester, but certainly so that you can understand it and begin applying it as you engage with our week 2 readings and videos and content. I also want to remind you that the critical vocabulary that we will explore every week will show up on your quizzes, and the expectation is that you will be able to start integrating these terms and applying them in your analysis through your discussion posts and through your reflections. So it is very important that you watch these videos and that you really understand and are able to apply these vocabulary words. As we get started at the beginning of the semester in our ethnic studies course, we must understand and give respect to the Third World Liberation Front, which was formed in the late 60s, and it was comprised of multi-ethnic coalitions of student organizations at San Francisco State College and UC Berkeley. Predominantly the Black Student Union at San Francisco State, which started the movement, joined with Asian students and Chicano students to form the Third World Liberation Front. The fight was for accessible education and relevant, culturally affirming studies for and by people of color and for students of color. The term Third World connected racial minorities in the U.S. to the important crusades for independence and self-advocacy in Third World countries affected by Western colonization. And other movements influenced the Third World Liberation Front, including the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War. But if it wasn't for the Third World Liberation Front, we may not have the benefit of sitting in an ethnic studies class to this day. So we have to know what this organization stood for and give respect to the way that they paved the path for ethnic studies departments and courses to come in the future. Self-determination was integral in the role of the TWLF's mission. Self-determination meaning having the power to go into the world and demand and fight for the things that you deem are important in your life. The concept of self-determination in regards to students called on schools to address the systemic oppression that was caused by racism. Through self-determination, students of color would decide what culture meant for themselves. And again, we're talking about Black students wanted to define Black studies for themselves. Asian American students wanted to define Asian American studies. Chicano students wanted to define Chicano studies. Native American students wanted to define Native American studies. And they wanted and they demanded instructors that looked like them. people that reflected the experiences of those groups to teach the content so that they could share their life experiences. These students wanted education that focused more on the needs of the communities that the students came from. And they demanded that the business of education, meaning education solely for making money, take a second seat, take a second place to the real objective of an education, which is to inform the students in ways that benefit their lives and benefits their communities. And the fact that this all happened in the late 60s heightened the sense of activism and self-determination and motivation that students were experiencing in order to help them stand up for themselves and demand change. One of the most common terms that you will encounter in an ethnic studies course, and certainly in this course, is the word racism. And certainly many of us have heard the word, used the word, understand the word, apply the word to describe experiences in our lives. But it is a very complex term, and according to dismantlingracism.org, racism is different than just prejudice, hatred, or discrimination. Racism is when one group has a tremendous amount of power, for example, white or Europeans in America, has the power to carry out systematic discrimination through the institutional policies and practices of the society, while shaping the cultural beliefs and values that support those racist policies and practices. So this is much deeper than just somebody shouting, a nasty racist word at somebody else. This has to do with the ways that racism is deeply embedded in our country through our educational systems, through our politics, through our legal systems, through our economic systems. And we will explore more of that in the upcoming slide. And if you look at this picture, you'll see a pair of glasses that says white vision glasses. And there's a brother standing there who's drinking a soda, carrying a backpack and a phone, but through racist lens, it's not a backpack or books that he's carrying, it's illegal substances. And it's not a phone, it's a gun. And it's not soda or juice, it's like alcohol, right? So this is an example of a racist interpretation of a black man. While most of us have a general understanding of the term racism, we may not be as aware of the specific types of racism that exists and that impacts people in deeply negative ways. For example, there's systemic racism, which is system-wide racial inequality from the collective policies and practices of social institutions. So when we think about the United States systems of law and the racism that is embedded in the ways that people of color are treated in law, or through law enforcement, or through police brutality, or through the prison system in our country, etc. Or we can think of racism in education and the ways that students are treated with inequity and inequality within school systems, or mass media, the way that race impacts who the images of beauty are in our country, and who gets cast in roles, or who is seen as a villain and who is seen as a victim in mass media, etc. Then there's systematic racism, which is racism that is engaged in methodically, according to a plan. Very intentional racism that is designed to keep certain people on the bottom and certain people on the top. We see structural racism, which is a type of systemic racism that specifies the history, culture, and social psychology of a racialized society. So, for example, in this country, the way that the histories of people of color have been marginalized or neglected or left out of education so that one group of people is presented as the ideal form of lifestyle or civilization, and others are made to seem inferior or as minorities. There is environmental racism, which is racism where certain racial groups are disproportionately exposed to environmental hazards such as toxic waste and pollution. And when we explore environmental racism, we will see how if you live in a poor neighborhood, the chances are more likely that those neighborhoods will be closer to areas where the water isn't healthy, or the air is not healthy, or the ground itself has toxic pollutants in it, or the materials in your home may be toxic, or you may not have access to the types of grocery stores that provide really healthy foods. And we will explore environmental racism further on in this semester. And then there's individual racism, which is racism that is caused by individuals. So that's when you see, the videos of people filming others hurling racial insults at them, or being insulted in schools one-on-one basis, or acts of physical violence against one another done by individuals. And so these are 5 different types of racism that exist in our societies. And if we look to the left, we will see that a couple more definitions of racism, that racism equals racial prejudice plus social and institutional power, or racism equals a system of advantage that is based on your race, or racism equals a system of oppression based on race, or racism equals a white supremacy system. And we will explore all of these concepts in much greater depth in the future. In this model of the 3 expressions of racism, we see an institutional, personal, and cultural facets of racism. And on the external circle, we see that racism entails how people of color are excluded, underserved, financially exploited, or oppressed and invalidated. And on the opposite side, we see how white people, on the other hand, are included, how they are served, how they have the resources financially to help support, their endeavors in life, and how they are uplifted and validated in United States society. And then when we go into the inside triangle, we see the institutional facet of racism, again, which are the policies and the practices of law, of education, of politics, of society that promote racism. On the inside of the triangle, we see the personal facet of racism, which are individual acts committed against each other in society. And the question that is posed is, how are individuals accountable to each other and to racial justice? And then at the bottom, we see cultural facet of racism, the beliefs, values, and norms. And the question is, how do community beliefs, values, and norms validate whiteness and invalidate people and communities of color? So what are the traditions, the languages, the styles of dress, the music, the characteristics and behavioral tendencies of a group of people? How are some deemed as normal or as accepted in this country versus others? Another really important term that we will use over and over again in this course is discrimination. And it is related to racism, but it's not exactly the same. So discrimination is the act of denying rights, benefits, justice, equitable treatment, or access to facilities available to all others, to an individual or to a group of people because of their race, nationality, language, age, religion, gender, handicap, or other defining characteristic. And as we can see in this picture, you see a long line of people who are raising their hands to get a job. So this is an example of employment discrimination. And, who's being picked is kind of like a white guy who is probably middle-aged, while there are, a variety of other people who could potentially be chosen or selected, but who aren't being selected for potentially, their ethnicity. Looks like we have a Sikh man raising his hand. Maybe ability levels. There's somebody in a wheelchair who says you could pick me. There are a couple of older people, so maybe age is a form of discrimination that's impacting, or there's a pregnant girl, or there's a black man. So anyway, discrimination has to do with denying certain benefits in society to a group of people based on a variety of different characteristics, and that's discrimination. Now let's define the term oppression. It is the systematic subjugation or controlling of one social group by a more powerful social group for the social, economic, and political benefit of the more powerful social group. So in our terms in America, we're talking about the subjugation of people of color by the white European ruling class in our country. And there are many facets or different types of oppression. For example, genocide, or the mass extermination of entire groups of ethnicities of people by another race. Racism is, of course, an example of oppression. There's religious persecution. So based on your religion, you can be oppressed in a society. And we see that widespread in this country, particularly towards Islam, or people who are Muslim in this country. We have oppression regarding homophobia, or people who are scared of gay or lesbian or transgender people, right? We have classism as a form of oppression, meaning the lower social economic income that you have, the more likely you are to be controlled by those who are more wealthy. There is oppression of mental health, meaning, for the variety of different ways that people are impacted by mental health issues can lead to their oppression. Ableism, whether or not you are able-bodied, or whether or not you are in a wheelchair or can get around the way that others can. Ageism, based on, are you too old to be hired, or are you deemed as too old to be hired, is a form of oppression, or too young for that matter. Are you a victim of sexual assault? Are you victimized, and has that oppressed you in some way? Obviously, if you are a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, certainly you have faced different levels of oppression. Criminalized poverty. So let's say, have you been to jail? How has that stigma impacted you, or somebody that you know, or somebody that you love? How are they oppressed after they returned to society? How does education, or our systems of education, oppress individuals by either allowing access to higher education and a better quality education that improves the chances of getting a good career and graduating from college and obtaining a degree? And what are the ways that education oppresses individuals in this country? Certainly there's sexism, the difference between male gender and female gender, and how your gender is either subjugated or in control or have power. And then there's also veterans and military oppression. the ways that people who serve our country and then come back to this country only to be let down by the services that are provided for them after they have so courageously fought or defended our country is another serious form of oppression as well. Rita Hardiman and Bailey Jackson state that oppression exists when the following 4 conditions are found. When the oppressor group, and in this case in the United States of America, or the white ruling class, has the power to define reality for themselves and others. 2, the target groups, meaning BIPOC or people of color, take in and internalize the negative messages about them and end up cooperating with the oppressors. In other words, thinking and acting like them. And I'm sure that if we think in our mind, we can actually relate to this statement, and we can come up with examples of how we have experienced this or seen this taking place. When Black people, Mexican people, Asian American people, Native American people actually internalize the stereotypes and perpetuate the behaviors that are seen to be negative, right? Or end up cooperating with the oppressors, meaning striving to become more like the white or European ruling class and less like the people whose ethnicities and cultures that they stem from. The next bullet point says genocide, harassment, and discrimination are systematic and institutionalized so that individuals are not necessary to keep it going. So that means that the racism, the oppression is so embedded in our mentalities, in our psyches, in our daily habits, in the ways that we function in our society that, people don't need to remind each other that these systems, need to exist in order for racism to continue to be perpetuated. They just happen automatically because it's so deeply embedded in our minds that this is the way that it is, right? And then the final bullet point says members of both the oppression and the target groups are socialized to play their roles as normal and correct. So this is when people of color in this country just accept and kind of resign themselves that this is the way it is. This is the way it's always going to be. There will always be police brutality. There will always be inequality in housing, in economics, in education, and in politics. That this is just the way it's going to be. And then we stop fighting for change, right? That's oppression. And if we look at the left side of the page, we see oppression equals power plus prejudice. What you see here on this page is a critical vocabulary chart. And there's an explanation that you will also be able to find in your week 2 module about how to create a critical vocabulary chart. So every week, you're going to be learning new vocabulary words. And the way that we will remember these words and be able to refer to them again for quizzes and as we write our discussion posts and journal reflections will be to create a chart in which on one column you'll have all of the words that will be presented to you through these videos. And then the next column is a definition in your own words. So it's really important that you're not just copying and pasting the definitions of these words that you find online, because those definitions really don't mean anything to us. What's more important is that you're able to process and state or restate the definition through your own lens, through your own mind, through your own opinions and viewpoints. So it's really important that what goes in the second column is a way to make sense of the word so that it makes sense to you personally. And then the third column is really important as well. It is an image. You're going to go online. You can find through Google searches an image that correlates to that vocabulary word. And having the image that we can associate mentally with the vocabulary words helps the definitions imprint and last in our memories in really long-lasting ways. So all three components will be required. Now, check this out. You're not submitting this on a weekly basis, but at the end of the semester, you're going to turn in your critical vocabulary chart with all of the words that we have discussed throughout the semester. So you can create your chart on a Google document if you'd like. You can do it as a Word document, and then at the end of the semester, you're just going to attach it as a file. So it's something that's going to grow as the weeks go by. And this week, we have a few words just to get started with. So you will start this week by adding the words in this video to your critical vocabulary chart. If you have any questions about this, there will be some instructions inside your module. Also, you can always just email me and you can ask. Thank you for your engagement with our week 2 video. Make sure that you don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions about any of the week 2 content. I hope that you stay warm and well, and I look forward to seeing your reflections this week. Take care, everybody.